Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Thank you. So if I have the permission, may I remove my mask to talk? It's more comfortable? Yes. Thank you.
To all of you. First of all, thank you all for coming here and attending this session. So let's begin the session by introducing, we have with here Venerable Samten La. I mean, she does not need an introduction, most of us already know her, but for those people who do not know her, we have with here Venerable Samten La, who was initially formerly known as Barkha Madan, who was a former actress, a Miss India finalist, and a producer, and the list can just go on and on. But then she chose to, one day, even though it was a very sudden decision, but a very mindful one, because I've read and I've learned that, she's been always inclined to Buddhism and, Buddhist techniques and Buddhist philosophy, even when she was younger. So, but in November 2012, she decided one day to just take this decision under the mentorship of Lama Zopa Rinpoche in Seraje Monastery, where she ordained herself and became a Buddhist nun. So without taking much time, I'd like to ask Venerable Samten La to share her experience, how was that, and why at the peak of her career, where she was gaining all that material fame as we speak, she was doing really well in her career, and what led her and what motivated her and what inspired her to renunciate all those worldly pleasures and become a nun. So over to you, Venerable La.
Good afternoon once again, and thank you so very much for joining me here today. And thank you, Sengla, for that introduction. Not that I am worthy of any of those nice words you said. So before we begin this session formally, if I may please request everybody to assume a comfortable posture. Today is a very auspicious day, as Lama would know, who's abiding here amongst us. Today is Lama Tsongkhapa Day, and I'm sure most of us who come from Buddhist backgrounds must have done our prayers and practices this morning before arriving to the venue. Just for the sake of auspiciousness and for the sake of the blessings of this grand day, let's begin by a short meditation, and whereby I'll request everybody to please just assume a comfortable posture, relax, and while we are sitting and engaging here in a talk whereabout we will be leading ourselves into understanding how we can really use Buddhist techniques to create a healthy mental environment for ourselves, I feel it's better that we start by shaping our motivation for engaging in this talk here together. So if I may please lead you into one. So if you could take a comfortable posture, relax, and just for about 2 minutes, let's do a mindfulness of breath meditation. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So please get into a nice comfortable posture. And if you like, you may close your eyes, or you can have your eyes gazing downwards at a 45-degree. Totally relax your body. Make sure your back is upright and not sinking into your chest. And just for about a few seconds, allow your mind to be here in this moment. And as you do so, bring your attention down to your feet and slowly raising your awareness along your calves, relaxing your legs, raising your awareness all the way up to your front pelvic area. Relax your body So this body of ours, which we cherish so much, is a tool to assist our mind to look within. Paying attention to your spine. So raise your awareness along your spine. Then bringing your awareness to your solar plexus, paying attention to the rise and fall of your belly, noticing the flow of prana. Prana, your life force energy flowing within you, reminding you every moment with every exhalation that I'm alive. And how wonderful is that? I'm alive today. Bring your attention to the center of your chest. Feel the warmth of your innate compassion, loving kindness. And then bring attention to the flow of your breath moving in and out of your nostrils. And simply remain with your breath with 5 counts, observing the subtlety of your prana. And then from the state of quietude, generate a motivation for engaging in this session. Really allow yourself, your mind, to be here in this moment. What brings me here? Why am I here? I could have been doing something else. Why is it important for me to engage in a session of this kind? Take a deep breath, and as you exhale, relax your mind and your body. And generate a sense of gratitude. How fortunate I am that I'm alive and I have the potential to become an awakened being. How fortunate I am that I have the tools and techniques to cultivate my true potential to become an awakened being. And how fortunate I am, even though the odds are against me, I'm alive. In this very moment, hale and hearty. Generating a sense of gratitude. And rejoicing in the merits of all the gurus and Buddhas that are guiding us and blessing us. And rejoicing in your own merits for all the kind actions one may have done this morning, yesterday, and every waking moment of their lives. Return to your breath. And as and when you're ready, please allow yourself to be aware of your space and open your eyes. Thank you very much for engaging in this practice. So now going over your question. There were many things that I would question when I was young about the meaning of this life, my purpose of being in this world, and coming from a background which allowed me to question and sort of, explore different modalities I chanced upon Buddha Dharma at the age of 10 because my father was posted in a place called Sikkim, and as we all know, it's primarily a Buddhist place. So my first interaction or exposure to a Buddhist place was at Rumtek Monastery. And when I was there, I think I was very overwhelmed by the pristine beauty of the monastery, and I was just 10 years old. And also looking at the playful interaction of all the monks around, it left a very strong impression in my heart, and I thought, I want to live here. And I did express this to my parents, but who takes a 10-year-old seriously? So they said, nothing doing, please get in the car and we're going home. Moreover, look around you, my mom said, only boys become monks, and you are a girl. And at that point, I had not seen any nuns, because obviously it was a monastery, so there were little monks around. And I did not like that reply much, and I said, I hope when I grow up I become a boy. Or at least, things that boys can do, I'm allowed to do. That was my first impression, and it stayed for quite some time. I even devised many ways to run away from my house, cut my hair really short so that I could be mistaken for a boy, and I could be sent to a monastery, or the monastery would accept me, but all those plans failed. Clearly, I was not a good planner. Then as I grew up, as a young adult, a girl growing up in our society, it became very imperative that if one needs to sort of progress or venture out or do things, one needs to be economically independent. And that gives you a freedom to follow your dreams. And that led me somehow, becoming an actor was not my aim. Joining a monastery was, and then that translated into becoming an investigative journalist, and then various ideas kept popping in and out of my mind. Eventually, I led to being an actor, a model. So I did experience immense amount of economic independence, freedom, so to say, and that freedom appealed to a teenager's mind. Oh wow, I have money and I can do so much with it. As I was progressing in my career, fame was coming, so was name and good amount of money. Also, it was leading to a lot of questioning, like what next? Why do I still have this state of dissatisfaction in my mind? Is becoming rich and famous the only goal for me? And then I chanced upon a few books. Interestingly, rather I would say whenever I reflect on it, it's with a sense of sadness, because it came through a Westerner to me. When I would ask around my own peer group or my own family, they would say, you're too young to even ask these kind of questions, don't meddle your mind with it. This is something you should do in your old age. It's one of the occasions that I was at Goa, having a vacation with my family, that we met a German scholar, and he was sitting by himself. So we invited him on our table because it seemed very odd that on in a festive time somebody's sitting alone. So we invited him on our table, and I asked him, what brings you to India? He said, I'm here to study Buddha Dharma, Buddhist philosophy. And I was like, what do you mean? You can actually study Buddhist philosophy? Whereabout? And that was his chance to get alarmed. He says, I don't believe you don't know in your own country you can study Buddhist philosophy. And that embarrassed me, at the same time gave me some hope. So I asked him where would he be heading after his vacation, and he said to Dharamsala. And then something in my heart just lit up, and he said, and what about in Dharamsala? So then he pointed me towards the teachings of His Holiness Dalai Lama, and he said he's going to give open teachings, anybody can join them. I decided to book myself for those teachings, and I arrived there. So my first interaction with someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama helped me understand certain queries I was having in my mind, that all the answers that I'm seeking are actually very well laid out here. And the teachings were about bodhicitta. So we've heard the word bodhicitta. When His Holiness was explaining the idea, the concept, the phenomena of bodhicitta, I did not know much. I only knew it sounded very familiar and something that was moving something in my heart, and I was trembling with joy. And I said, I would like to know more and explore more. So I enrolled myself in a philosophy course there. And while I was still engaging in my acting career, I would spend time studying and understanding more of Buddha Dharma. Eventually, the urge became very strong, and I ended up approaching my Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and I asked him if I could embrace Buddha Dharma totally and I'd become a nun. And all this while I had kept my aspiration under wraps. I did not want anyone else to tell me you should not be going on this path because you're too young, as I'd heard the story before. So I didn't want to in some ways get influenced by this kind of a logic that don't do it now, you're too young for it. So I kept my aspirations to be a monastic under wraps, and then when I approached my guru, he gave me a thumbs up. So which meant, yes, please go ahead and do it. And so yes, in 2012, he gave me the blessings, and I took my ordination, my Getsul vows at Saraji Monastery. Yes, this is how it unfolded for me. What truly, really attracted me to the Buddhist path was the very first teaching that I heard, that even if you hear it from me, the Buddha, please question it, please analyze it. Don't take it on face value. Test it like how you test gold. Like if you were a jeweler and you had to buy gold and make it into a piece of jewelry, you would test that, purity of that gold. Similarly, please test my teachings and check for yourself if it applies to you. So that's where the blind faith, superstition, do what I'm saying as we hear it from our parents and our superiors, went out of the window for me. Second, because I was questioning freedom and what is freedom, it gave me clear indicator. Even His Holiness said in his talk at that particular time, you could be having a lot of fame, name and power, but do you have the power to get rid of your anger? Have you gotten rid of your anger? Do you think you have elevated yourself that you can defy death? Do you think you have the freedom from not being reborn into another miserable realm? And that appeals to my mind because it made me reflect on my definition of freedom, which so far was only to earn a lot of money so I can do whatever I want. So my definition of freedom was like, I want to live life on my own terms. And then came this whole idea that freedom really means this, and it comes with a whole lot of added responsibilities. So I thought all of these things make sense. And because someone like His Holiness is saying it, and because it has been time tested over 2,600 years ago, it must be valid. May I give it, what do I have to lose? May I give it a good chance to explore it? And I did that over a few years, and then finally I thought, yes, it's time to embrace it full-fledgedly.
So that is quite a wonderful and inspiring journey, and a very introspective one, where Venerable, you've listened to your heart's deepest calling, and you had the courage to go ahead and seek it. So that just brings us to the next question, that I've heard you mention this in one of your interviews, that you said that you were always questioning ethics in your career, in your every decision of your life. So obviously from what we've heard from you right now, you've been this person who followed ethics. But I would like to question you that how it is so relevant in today's world, and how we all can question ethics, and what would you comment about that?
How would be a life without ethics is what I would question myself and everybody else out there. Everybody is seeking happiness. And if we understand, coming from a Buddhist point of view, we are all interdependent. Nobody is an entity on their own. You know, and the very first thing that's laid out, not even in just Buddha Dharma, but any religious faith, is to be true, to be honest, you know, is to not engage in misdeeds, is to engage in positive deeds. How can we have a life without ethics and then be happy? All of our misery, our suffering is stemming because we are not practicing ethics. We know about it. We are familiar with those terms. We all have taken self-liberation, pratimoksha vows. We all have taken refuge vows, and we know what our 5 Panchashila, 5 principles are. But when it comes to really reflecting and talking about it, we somehow feel not adequate in applying it. You know, we have this duality. My reciting my refuge in the morning is one thing, one checklist done, and me actually when engaging with it and with the world around, I can somehow dwindle with it. थोड़ा ऊपर नीचे हो सकता है. इतना honest होने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. And then we complain. I can't trust people around me. But are you a trustworthy person? I can't depend on my team. Can your team depend on you? You know, I cannot share my inner thoughts with people because they will not understand me. Are you the person who can understand people? Do you have an open heart? And this is all stemming down from ethics. And if we see our systems, you know, at one level it collapses because we are lacking in ethics. It bogs us down together. And while I'm saying this, I'm very aware I do have some very, you know, high officials and dignitaries sitting about here and managing really, you know, difficult institutions here, including law and order. And they would know themselves that how they face challenges when they are in their everyday activity, how they think, oh, I have to be using some skillful means to maneuver around this, you know. But if you step back for a moment and you see, if everybody thinks and reflects like that, we end up collapsing it. It becomes like a domino effect, you know. And truly, if I want to be happy, I should be able to have the courage to do what is right. And of course, right and wrong can have various perspectives. But we do know what is right in a general perspective of human interaction, human beings. You know, the first vow that we take as a refuge vow for the Buddhists is not to kill. Of a vow of non-violence. Please do not kill. Don't harm other beings. And don't harm other beings not just by taking life, but with your body, speech and mind. But you see, we only think not killing means not drawing blood, not harming the body. But how much pain we inflict on others by the virtue of our speech. And it's something we don't really want to sit back and reflect. What I'm putting out there is surely going to come back to me. That's the natural law. It's the law of karma. It's not even something Buddha invented or discovered, you know. He just underlined it. Yes, this is a natural law, and I have tried and tested in my own experience. It holds validity. And because it is valid, I present it to you as a path. Restrain yourself from these 5 actions, which are unwholesome. So I think, yes, and coming from the field that I was in, diluting your sense of ethics is a very common practice, accepted practice. You don't have to tell the entire truth, or you may somehow maneuver around it. It's a very accepted norm. So it was becoming a bit of a challenge in my mind. Here I'm reading all these beautiful texts and trying to transform my mind, and here I am in a place where I'm constantly challenged. So then, what is the right way? To cultivate a skillful way to battle this, or to say, okay, this, no matter how much skillfully I deal with it, will leave an imprint on my mind and keep on throwing me into this cycle of having miserable experiences. And clearly, who wakes up in the morning to say, today I think I like to be miserable because it's -3 degrees outside, might as well make my mind more miserable. I don't think we wake up with this heart, do we? But we do actions that make us miserable. So I think, yes, not just me, you ask the Lamaji sitting there, how does he feel about ethics? And he'll tell you how important it is.
Sure, thank you again. So moving on to the last question. So it's been, I'm sure, it seemed like to us that it's been quite a wonderful journey for you. So lastly, I just want to ask that how is this you being the transformation into, with this nun, how is it going so far? What are you learning so far? Even though it is still a journey and I'm sure you have a long life to lead on, but how is it going so far?
So, actually this is interesting. I'm thinking like this question has a few layers. When we are in a very normal garb and doing our ordinary normal life and jobs, we deal and engage with the world in a different way altogether. And the world engages with us similarly on a certain level, As I transitioned from being that working professional and, so to speak, coming from a place which is where you're always in the limelight to becoming a Buddhist nun, first thing I understood was how strongly we adhere to our labels. We are so attached to our labels. And the very first thing, the great kind master Shakyamuni Buddha has very skillfully laid out, a whole roadmap. First, he will say, strip off your labels. Even your own name. So my legal name is Barkamadan. I imagine now stripping off your name. How many of us are comfortable with that? Because my name becomes my identity. Then I'm an actor becomes my identity. Then, I was holding a title of a beauty pageant becomes an identity. How many labels? I come from Delhi is my identity, born to so-and-so parents. What kind of a religion were they practicing? My identity. But what is truly my identity? Are these labels my identity? So the very first thing that really struck me was that, oh, what a sense of freedom, I am rid of all these labels. So that was one aspect I really truly think was very liberating for me the day of my ordination. No more labels. Of course, they give you a label again. They say, this is your dharma name now, adhere to this. And, well, in the conventional world, I would perhaps require something that people can, reach out to me and communicate with me. So that's fine. Second thing I felt importantly was when you find a guru and you devote yourself to your guru, he's not there to humor you. He's not there to be your buddy. He's there to show you and point very directly at your ego or your other sort of, kaleshas, so that you can help get rid of it. So he's not there to, mollycoddle you, to be like this teddy bear sort of a, please, Lamala, help me, I'm in this trouble. Your guru is not there meant for this. He's there to really pull the rug under your feet. Give you a sense of grounding and direction and say, follow this. So, In other words, he's trying to say, don't create dependency on me. I've laid out the path. Go, tread the path, have your experiences, have your challenges, and then see what comes about it. And I'm there to guide you. I'm there to guide you, but you have to do your own homework. I will not do the homework for you. And that is something, Shakyamuni Buddha laid out very clearly for us. The journey is still going on. I'm not saying that I have all the answers, nor do I have all the answers for all the questions you all must be holding in your mind right now, But it's a quest. And I am today, in this moment, very happy that I chose this path. And I'm very confident I chose the right path. And of course, enlightenment is the end goal for all Buddhist practitioners, and especially so the monastics. But I'm in no hurry. I don't put the pressure on my head of saying one lifetime only. That I have felt every time I do that, it causes more gloom in me than actually following the path. Then, another important learning is that no matter who we are, we can always be kind. No matter in what situation we are, we can always choose kindness. Every time we are put in a predicament or in a position where we have to make choices, and then we question that, is free will a choice? And I think eventually down in our time together, we will hear a TED talk by a dear friend of mine where he emphasizes this in far more detail. Free will is a skill. That's something we can cultivate, and I will leave it for that. But for my own personal understanding, you can always make choices. And we can always make choices to be kind and compassionate. And for me, a learning importantly was that compassion is not weakness. Compassion is strength. It's a tool. It's a tool that gives you the strength even to put the wrong in the right place. And it gives you the courage and the ability to do it skillfully. Compassion is not just always being meek and bowing yourself. To be truly compassionate, one needs a mic to express that. To be truly compassionate, one really needs to understand the interconnectedness one has with their outer conditions, people and things. And it's possible. It's a tool that we can engage in. It's not something to be just thought about and left on a meditation cushion in the morning. Another important learning, especially so in my journey of being a Buddhist nun, is that people are going to engage with you from their perspectives. Just because now I'm in the garb of the Dharma robes, they are not going to automatically have respect for me. Of course, kind Ladakhi people have genuine respect for monastics, but that's not something I have faced in other parts of India. They can be quite cruel, to say the least. So yes, people engage with you from their understanding, from their levels of exposure to dealing with monastics. And I'll give you an anecdote here. So, in my passport, I had my regular photograph of being a layperson. And now I'm suddenly ordained, and so I have this whole garb. So I had to go for a talk to United States. So I was boarding a flight. So at the airport, he stopped me and he said, "Ye kiska passport leke aaye ho?" So I said, "It's my passport." So he says, "Show me some other ID." every idea I had my old picture, So he had a tough time being convinced that this is the same person. So I made a mental note of it. I said, okay, sooner I will change my passport photograph to being what I look like right now. I enter while I'm being frisked, as they do their old drill of doing the security checks. I'm standing in the queue of ladies, so I get a tap on my shoulder, says, "Sir, udhar jaiye." So I turn around, says, "Oh, ye to ladies hai." So, at times this could be very humorous and sort of, you take it on a lighter note. At times it would become like, have you not seen a Buddhist nun? And don't you know it's rude to touch her body like this, the way you're doing it? Could you not just call out my name or just say, excuse me, and sort of like pulling me from the back and saying, get on the line here. That's something I started reflecting on and saying, see, people are engaging with you, it's how they perceive you, and for them, this is unknown. Which was acceptance on my part, yet a slight hint of sadness was coming along with it. The sadness was stemming from the fact that Buddha Dharma originates from India, from the Arya Bhumi as we say it. And how ignorant are the people of India, that they do not know what a bhikshuni looks like, that they do not know how to engage with one. We have all studied historical Buddha's life story in our textbooks, but in our actual lives we are so far removed with knowing how to engage with one. And then on the other hand, when I land up in a place like Himachal, in the upper belt, or in a place like Ladakh, then you are put on a pedestal. So that also makes your heart go a little bit like, what is expected of me now? There's a huge layer of expectations that I don't think I can meet with. So these are some of my experiences, yeah, but more so I would say I'm quite happy where I am right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We could just go on and ask you more questions. We'd like to know more, and there's so much learning for all of us to have. But with the time constraint that we have, I'm just going to move on to the next segment we have. That is, convergence of Buddhism and psychology. As to how both of these can come together and help people have probably better mental health. So. Without taking much time, I'm just going to be flooding you with questions, but of course we can make it interactive as you suggested. So Venerable, from these conversations, what we can derive is that Buddhism has always been a religion, but it's also been a science, where it leads people to have a very mindful way of life, and also Buddhism, at the heart of Buddhism we have mental wellness, that is striving for happiness, so elimination of suffering. At the same time, His Holiness has also been very, very active in the field of science, trying to collaborate with science, and how science and Buddhism can both work together, because both actually aspire to have a better mental health care. So I'd like to quote one of the founder of psychology, American psychologist. He was the first psychologist, William James. He had quoted in 1900s that after about 25 years, everybody would be studying Buddhist psychology, which of course eventually happened only a century later. But having said that, I'd like to say that there's a lot of research that's coming in. There's a lot of we're going to talk about in our next segments about mindfulness and how it has entered into psychology, field of psychology. But I'd like to ask you, Venerable, that in your practice, or not just in a very general sense, that how we can, according to you, that Buddhism and psychology can yield a more comprehensive sort of foundation for the people, and how Buddhism, and according to you, how Buddhism plays a role in that, and in a better mental well-being, and how it can collaborate with psychology.
Okay, that's calls for writing a book. But given the time constraints that we have right now, in the interest of time, whether we are studying psychology in the modern perspective or from the Buddhist perspective, what's the base idea here? What are we aspiring for? We are actually looking for happiness. So if I were to pose you a question, being a psychologist, what is mental health according to you, according to modern psychology? And even before I pose this question to a psychologist, by the way, you haven't introduced yourself, so just for everybody's knowledge, saying that here is a psychologist, and if you could please tell them which hospital and where you give your services.
Sure. So we have only one hospital here, it's called S&M Hospital, so I work there as a clinical psychologist, and it's been 4 years. And it's been quite a journey so far. As much as I'd like to accept that, as much as I'd been able to help people, psychology has only been able to help myself. So,
well, in some ways, whatever you asked me, you answered your question yourself, right? And I suppose it must have also answered many of our queries that we hold in our mind. What truly is the purpose of human beings? What are we doing on this planet besides making a living for ourselves, making our lives comfortable? We really want to be happy, isn't it? No matter who we are, whether we are a peasant working outside, whether we are holding a big designation somewhere in some institution, our purpose is to be happy. But what is that is obstructing us from gaining that true happiness? Why, in spite of having a certain amount of comfort, that we have so painstakingly acquired around us, we are not happy. The modalities that we're talking about here, whether it is coming from modern psychology or psychiatric treatments or the Buddhist perspective, and here we're not trying to do a comparative study. My whole aim for even engaging in a workshop like this was to understand how we can together synergize it in a way that helps us alleviate our own mental suffering. No matter how many times you approach a doctor or a Buddhist practitioner, specifically a monk or a nun or a lama, we can only go this much to help you. The actual homework, the spade work is coming from yourself. If you are not willing to accept, acknowledge, and then transform your own obstacle, you will remain with it. So, coming specifically to your particular query, what we are doing, unfortunately, is only treating the symptoms. Someone comes to you, you abide, sit down, you listen to their story, you give them a line of treatment, and he goes to a psychiatrist, can be prescribed a medicine, which is going to give you a temporary relief. Now, there is nothing wrong with temporary relief. But the question remains, after you have been relieved temporarily, what do you do next? Do you just simply sit back and say, I feel better, this medicine works for me, I can live on it forever? Or does your mind take you to the point, I need to get rid of it? So, whose thought process is that going to be? If you ask me, or if you ask Buddha for that matter, or any other High Lama, can you please tell me the purpose of my life? He would say, please sit back and reflect in your own heart what is the purpose of your life. Sit back and reflect what makes you happy. Of course, there's a whole general picture of what makes a person happy. But if you want to be happy and you're constantly engaging in actions of body, speech, and mind, which are otherwise, you are deflecting your purpose. So no matter how much medicine you prescribe or how much meditation I lead them into, there is going to be no change. Take the help of both the modalities. If something you find is not befitting your modern mind, your scientific mind, your analytical mind, from the Buddhist perspective, please try and refer to the modern psychology. Eventually it will lead you back here, because this has been laid out for you many, many years ago. And it's time tested. When you wake up in the morning, before even you step out of your homes and you decide, this is my workload for the day, take time for yourselves and reflect. How am I feeling today? How do I feel this morning? Am I at my optimal level? Please acknowledge yourselves. Nobody else can do that for you. This brief meditation we did just in the beginning was so brief, right? Just acknowledging your presence. Just acknowledging your presence. Just acknowledging your prana, this indicator that you're alive, that you have this moment. Acknowledging the fact that you have the potential to be an awakened being. But I'm just happy to be an actor. But I'm just happy to be an engineer. I'm just happy to be whatever. I don't want to reach my potential of being a Buddha. Well, if that's what you're choosing, then suffering comes along with it. You are just touching your symptoms and saying, manage my symptoms. And that's what we're doing. And how managing the symptoms helps you get rid of your suffering is something that I will ask you as a question. So how the two modalities can come together, we can go on and on talking about it.
Absolutely. So I think the one example that I can quote of is mindfulness. So mindfulness has brought in psychology, in the field of psychology, and Dr. John, Kabat-Zinn, he actually introduced he studied mindfulness. He took Buddhism courses, and then what he could derive from that was that he invented actually and brought about this program called mindfulness-based stress reduction therapy, and it has been quite a successful one in alleviating people who have been suffering from depression or anxiety, basically all the common mental illnesses, and research is still happening around that. There are so many thousands of mental disorders, starting from common mental illnesses to severe mental illnesses. And this in the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of research that's happening where it is also helping people who are experiencing deep trauma or, so to speak, even, severe mental disorders. But coming back, so, most of us who read and who are, there are so many people here who are connected with their own mental health. They know that mindfulness-based stress reduction therapy aims at, so initially, initially there are so many schools of psychology, so cognitive behavior therapy being one, where, as you said, that, we only focus at the symptoms, so the physician, or so we speak, the psychiatrist, give medicines, and then that temporary pain is alleviated and the person feels much better. But in mindfulness-based cognitive therapy or mindfulness-based stress reduction therapy, what we have seen over the years, what scientists have been noticing is that with the combination of both mindfulness and the CBT, it's actually working a really, it is actually proving to be more long-term beneficial to the patients. So there is, less relapse, so there is there's no recurrent episodes of the depression. So absolutely I agree with you that, we can only collaborate, and there's obviously so much, on the other hand, there's so much debate also that's happening around, where psychologists are being all, mental health professionals are being all defensive about that. Okay, so yeah, Buddhism is great and all that, but, what we have is, something which is more standardized and something which is more, scientific. It can be tested whether it's good or not, but, so, but like you said, that we're here today to, and that should be the purpose, that, at the end of the day, people are having pain, and just adding on. So in psychology, how we see is that, I'll give you a very small example, which is often given by Aaron T. Beck. He is the founder of CBT. So CBT is, I would say, one of the best therapy, and something which we can use, as I, being a new psychologist, I use this in my daily practice. So the person comes with the pain. So initially this was, founded by, I forgot the name of the physician. So the person comes with a joint pain, and, the person's entire attention goes towards the pain. So hence the suffering, so pain and suffering, the relationship. So then what, we ended up, what we ended up doing is that, how we are able to tell the patient, train the patient, the person experiencing the mental illness, to separate that pain from the suffering, to separate that thought. So you automatically, that leads on to automatic negative thoughts, where the person has thoughts like, why me? Why am I suffering? Why my life is not in my control? I'm doomed now. I do not have any hope. So then, hence the hopelessness, the feeling of worthlessness, and the sadness, which are all typical symptoms of depression. So then, mindfulness-based cognitive, which is of course derived from Buddhism, what it has been able to bring in the field is that you do not only separate that pain, or you, so to speak, negative thoughts from the suffering, but you're also accepting, being aware and non-judgmental about the suffering. So you're just trying to focus on the negative thoughts, and you're saying that, okay, this is a negative thought, now I need to work on this negative thoughts and challenge and make it and convert it into a positive thought. Another mindfulness, what it brings anew into the picture is that it's all right to have negative thoughts. This negative thoughts, it does not define you. You can have them, you can non-judgmentally be aware of it, empathize with it, and that has, proven very successful. So, like you said, we could only, I would just focus on the fact that just, bringing every element of, what is working. So, and then therapy is very personal to different people. Someone might be going through depression because of various reasons. That's a debate that we can't really cover in one day. So what works with one person may not work with another person also. So similarly, we have a lot of therapies also, Venerable La. So in the schools of psychology, we have, starting from psychodynamic, which was psychoanalytic, which was found by Sigmund Freud. He's like a big name in psychology. And then we have humanistic, positive psychology, which actually comes very close to Buddhist psychology. And then we have now mindfulness-based, these are all very short-term, these are called the third wave of therapy in mental wellness. So I agree with you. Again, we can always discuss this with our audiences, if they have different inputs to it and what worked with them and what did not work with them. But we have you here, and we'd like to, get it from you that, how with today's youth, being very, I would say, I would include myself as well, of course, that, we want quick answers, we want quick remedies. So these are what we're suggesting right now has a lot of hard work, where the person has to be mindful, you have to visit a therapist or not, probably read a book and, involve yourself, engage yourself in various courses. So how would you suggest, Venerable La, that, not everybody can probably, not in Ladakh per se, but not everybody can have access to therapy or, all of these amazing programs, but how we as human beings, people who are suffering, with the given modern age, mental illness is only on the rise. So how, as a Buddhist nun, would you suggest that, we suggest to, our youth that, where there's no quick relief, where we have to really work on it, and we have to really strive for it and, find a way. As you said very nicely, you have to do your own homework. So what would you suggest?
I mean, the young usually emulates what they see in their homes, If you want your youth to be happy, you have to set a kind of a conditioning in the house that allows them to be stable and at peace. You see a young child, they end up emulating the behaviors of their parents, don't they? If you question a child, why is he behaving in this way? Because he's imbibed it from his own environment. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that every child coming from a dysfunctional home environment is going to be depressive, manic, or having all kinds of mental sort of imbalances. But by and large, the children imbibe what they see in their homes. And they're the product of this kind of environment. Now, having said this, when we're talking about youth, look what we have granted our youth. When I'm saying this, I also include myself in it and you in it. What have we given, offered to our youth? We have taught them quick fixes. Did they learn quick fixes on their own? Why is that they're seeking quick fixes? Why is tolerance suddenly switched out of the equation? Why is the fact that, you be with your... Thank you. Why is that we are not encouraging them to acknowledge what they're going through? Why is that we are not having conversations around it in our own homes? And as I understand, especially coming from this particular area, very close-knit families, if you do not have the comfort level to express what you're going through within your own family, then there is something lacking there. Why is that young mind unable to express their anxiety or whatever they're going through? Why have we not initiated a dialogue? There is tremendous amount of respect for the elder, respect for the monastics. Is it only coming because it's been taught and ingrained into you, or do you genuinely believe it from your heart? Are we somewhere enforcing them to behave in a certain way, in some ways projecting our expectations on them so strongly that they actually want to feel disconnected, detached from what they have been taught? That's one. Second, and it's not just in the youth, everybody wants to quickly get rid of their, discomfort. But the fact that your discomfort did not come to you overnight. We have to acknowledge this. The discomfort that you're facing has been building up over years, and not just this lifetime, but previous lifetime. Your imprints, your constant engaging with your imprints. Just the very fact that you say, give me a pill, I want to get rid of it, is setting yourself up for disaster. Or, a sense of hopelessness. We are exposed to a lot of stuff on social media. We're exposed to many other things. We're exposed to things like 2-minute noodles. So we think, yes, things can be done quicker and faster. There's no doubt about that. But quick and faster is only, like I said before, only suppressing your symptoms. Quick and fast is not remedy. And coming back to, again, the premise of the Buddha Dharma, very first thing Shakyamuni Buddha says when he gives his first account of teaching, life is suffering. And you would think back and say, really great Muni, that's all you came up with. I know what life is suffering. But here he defines to you what suffering is. And what we were just discussing, telling to me, is what we say as suffering of suffering, the very clear thing that we experience. I have a headache, so I know it's suffering. What can I do to get rid of my headache? But he's also saying, please understand, where is this headache stemming from? You feel the pain in some part of your head, but that's not the origin of your suffering. Once you know what is the origin of your suffering is when you will start to work on it. And when you find the root cause of your suffering, please be patient. Because this root cause wasn't placed there overnight. It has been brewing in you. And there are amazingly various kinds of modalities, especially in today's day and age, available to us to partake. And clearly so it's laid out in Buddha Dharma. There are 84,000 gateways to coming to Buddha Dharma. Buddha Dharma wasn't meant one size fits all. That's the biggest fallacy we have. One size fits all. No, it doesn't. It wasn't coined like that. Because this is what great Muni has pointed out. Everybody is unique. Yes, we have common sort of pains and miseries stemming from our kind of kaleshas, but each one's experience is different from the other. So how can we put them under the same umbrella and say everybody will go through this treatment, second wave of treatment, third wave of treatment? Something is really not being researched or percolated at a point, and then we sit on our so-called treatment seats and say we know better. And this is where the whole problem lies, I feel personally, that one, I'm suffering, second, I am then given more confusion than clarity, which way to go. And I'm not in a position to even use my discerning wisdom. So I just rely on my discriminatory wisdom. I don't even use my discerning wisdom. Is it working for me? Am I questioning what's happening around me? Coming from Buddhist backgrounds and homes, am I questioning my teaching? Am I seeing how it's valid for me? Is it applying to me? Am I really engaging with the practice in the right sense?
Emotionally, physically, socially, in every area of life, you're doing well. That is what meant the holistic,
Yes.
happiness.
Yes. So then, actually, we are all mentally unhealthy right now.
Absolutely.
Because we are not doing our optimal of being, socially well, emotionally well, and then giving back to the society and the community to let it sort of flourish. We all are having our own degrees of neurosis, of anger, jealousy, insecurities, ego dramas, mood swings, and whatnot. So we are all in the same bracket. So we are an unhealthy society. That is why these tools and techniques were laid out. That one, these don't define you. And then we adhere, like I said in the beginning, we are adhering to our labels, I'm an angry person. Don't mess with me. Your anger doesn't define you. And is your anger validating you in some way? Is it giving you the happiness you're seeking? Is it giving you the satisfaction you're seeking? If not, would you like to please get rid of this? But I can't, because my ego rises up. And then adding to is, it's very clearly laid out. We have 3 modes of ego. I don't know, just psychologists even talk about it to their patients if they come with something like, I have depression, right? They will never say to a patient and say, oh, do you have 3 modes of ego and you're working out of one of those modes, and which is, so the very first mode of ego is to blame. It loves to blame outside, the society, the education system, the government policies, my, staunch, rigid father, my wife, my kids. They are the cause for me to be unhappy. So the ego says, you're okay, buddy. It's these things that make you so angry. So it's all because of them. If these were not there, you would be happy. Yeah, that sounds like it's very pleasing to hear. It's not my fault. But who's making the society? It's each one of us. Second mode of the ego says, it lives in complete denial. Oh, it's not me. I'm so powerful. These things can't touch me. Haven't we heard an extreme wave of people thinking, COVID is not going to touch me? It can't touch me? And then, before you know, one tiny virus and your whole system is upside down. Or we live in the denial because we think we're so powerful, I have so much power and money. Nothing can create misery for me because I have all these things, I have all these assets. Do you have a calm, satisfied mind? So we live in a sense of denial. This can't happen to me. Depression can't happen to my child because I have given him the best of education, the best of clothing, the best of everything. He's just picked up this word from somewhere. This is his way of seeking attention. I've spoiled him. So we live in denial. Third mode of ego is something we all know of, and this is where some part of depression comes from, is guilt. It's happening to me, something is wrong with me, I'm a bad person. So I like to put myself down, beat myself up. So we don't know how to engage with ourselves in a healthy fashion. If I'm beating myself up to the level that I cannot give assistance to say, wait, I can help you, I'm there for you. How many of us have this conversation with ourselves? How many times have you looked yourself in the mirror and said, Samten, I'm there for you. I'll take care of you. Don't worry. I can acknowledge these symptoms, but these symptoms don't define you. I'll get you help. I'm such a bad person. I wake up this morning and I feel like I'm good for nothing. And now coming back again, and today being the Lamasokapa day, imagine the great master, the great yogi, so beautifully set out Lamrim for us. We all know Lamrim here? Most of us must be knowing Lamrim. Yeah? The path to enlightenment. How many of us, besides doing our morning puja and prayers, sit down with a meditation and say, what are the 4 thoughts that motivate you to practice Dharma? Do we reflect on impermanence? Because if we were reflecting on impermanence and death, clearly we would rejoice for the life we would have. If we were truly reflecting on the preciousness of our human rebirth, depression would go out of the window like this. But we are so caught up in engaging with what is stuck on top of and thinking it to be true. So the biggest suffering is not that I have a headache or I have a pervasive suffering of a kind, or I have experienced suffering of change, like I was experiencing yesterday, flying in from Delhi and my whole body system went for a toss. I don't know if I'm hungry or if I'm having, sensation of nausea, or I want to sleep or I want to wake up. I don't know what to do with myself. But if I tell myself, and I accept the fact that it's going to happen to you for 24 hours. This is how the body will acclimatize. Calm down. Why you want to give yourself double pain? First, you're already dealing and battling with external, and then internally you say, oh, I'm so miserable. What's wrong with me? I'm this Buddhist nun, I should have the capacity to be strong. But acknowledge the fact that you're made of 5 elements and they will fluctuate. Be easy on yourselves. How many times do we wake up in our everyday, working day, take a pause and reflect, am I working at my optimal level? Do I need to take a break? Am I hydrated? Am I engaging with people wholesomely? Is my mind here? Am I engaging with them in a righteous way, in a correct, compassionate way? Or have I started snapping at them already? Because if you've reached the point of doing it, it's time to take a pause. Are we giving ourselves this pause? Are we giving ourselves this pauses in our communication with our own relationships? Are we listening? Or are we just listening to answer back? Are we trying to pay attention to what's happening within our own selves? This breath meditation, this tool that has been cultivated so finely, so it's a sophisticated meditation it is. We're only using it, unfortunately, in the modern way the mindfulness has been taught, just to stay calm, relax, have a good night's sleep. But if you want to do that, then please soak yourself into a hot tub. Get a massage. Listen to good music. Watch a movie. The aim of Buddhist meditation is not to give you a relaxed feel. That's the healthy side effect we say. That's not the purpose. The purpose is you to engage with it in a way that you can uproot the cause of your suffering. So when you are operating from these 3 modes of ego all the time, fluctuating between 1, 2, 3, depending upon our dispositions, which means our imprints and our external factors, how do you ever come out of that cycle? We cannot come out of the cycle if we do not have the knowledge of it. And once we have the knowledge of it, where do you pause and say, listen, I need to do something about it? Then we have this added stigma. If I approach my elder in the family and say, I'm having these kinds of doubts, or I have these kinds of feelings with myself, I'm not happy, I'm having, so to say, suicidal thought, they might just label me mad. They might just say, quieten down, don't talk about it, look what people will say. We very happily will add stigma to the person. And we have seen stigma during COVID-19, when the pandemic was at its peak. If the health department would come and put a sticker outside your room or your house, the entire neighborhood will completely disengage with you. I noticed this in my neighborhood. An elderly couple, they had probably had some house help, and then they were declared COVID positive. Unfortunately, the whole residential society decided not to talk with them. And here is a Buddhist nun residing next to them. So I sent them a message saying that if you need anything, let me know. I'll place it outside your door. And the lady was crying over the phone. And I said, what makes you sad about it? I cook decent meals. She said, no, nobody has approached us. It's been 2 weeks. So I was just a bit overwhelmed. So imagine if this was you. So again, coming back to the point, whatever you are doing to the other comes back to you. Where do we stop and where do we engage?
Absolutely. I mean, Venerable, you talked about kindness, you talked about disengagements, you talked about, the disconnect. So that would only lead me to my next question. So we have social media these days, that we live in a digital world, I mean, of course, there are both, it's 50-50, there's this advantage and then there's disadvantage. Everything is accessible. Everyone can, have access to information, access to everything. But at the same time, there's a certain disadvantages to it, especially because, we're just not being mindful about our opinions. We're just, expressing all our thoughts and our emotions, without being mindful, without being kind about it. And we have one platform here in Ladakh as well, so which is quite controversial. It gets controversial, it's called Ladakh in the media, where I mean, it's really amazing that a lot of important issues are being discussed there. But at the same time, what we see is that there's a lot of arguments. So what we can what I derive from it is that there's so much of hate. There's so much of disengagement. There's so much of denial. So we're in a society where we really need to sit and be mindful of our actions. So I would just like to ask you that how we talk about religion, we're talking here about Buddhism, but then of course we know that there's so many other religion that just teaches and aspires, motivates us to aspire to be a good human being. But the only gap is that I just like to quote this, little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So when we do not know what really religion means, what really spirituality means, so then that's where you tend to do the harm, and that's where you cannot be kind enough. So how would you suggest that we cultivate true spirituality in our lives? Just obviously continuing for what you were sharing earlier, that how do we take advantage of the digital world? That it's just amazing for Ladakhi people. I think we've lived without the technologies, so we speak, or the internet. So now that it's come to our lives, there's of course a certain advantage and there's a certain disadvantage. But how do we balance that? How do we really, if you want to, just take it, like you said, if you want ourselves to be at our optimum level, how do we do that?
Would you ask this question, how much food you need to eat in the morning to be your optimal level? And what recipe to follow? Isn't it something like that?
Yeah.
Like, how can I decide this for you?
Right.
So each one of us knows, this is the kind of nutritious value I need to put into my body, and this is the kind of food that agrees with my body and helps me take me through a day. information is important. What kind of information I'm putting into my head is also very important. And how I engage with the information. Because we have so many information outlets and flooding us with various kinds of thoughts and ideas. Are we really questioning them? Are we just simply lapping it up? Who has made this norm that white skin is beautiful skin? But we all lap it up. Is Indian skin white by lighter by disposition? There could be a belt of India which is having lighter skin, which is nice and it is naturally theirs. But how much we strive to get that kind of a skin, and we have labeled it as so-called epitome of beauty. Light skin. We all strive for it. Perhaps the only nation where we can sell beauty creams to lighten your face, and it never works. Yet we buy it. And we have this consumer mentality towards it, and we think it might someday work for me. एक ट्यूब से क्या होता है? 2-3 और लगाएंगे. We will not go out in the sun. Try not going out in the Ladakh sun. I'll see. Right. How are we engaging with this information? Have we ever questioned it? Have we ever woken up as a society and said, this does not apply to me. I will not adhere to it. I reject it. Do we have the courage? But we simply go with the flow. To the extent that we expect, when we're looking for our partners and our brides and our grooms to be light-skinned, to be beautiful, and we idolize them in films and other places. Social media is doing its job, Marketing tools are doing its job. Its job is to add to their confusion and make money out of it. And I've been there. I have modeled for some of these products, not fairness creams. Is it true? Is it applicable to me? Do we question it? There is nothing that's out there that is, 100% applicable to each one of us. So if that particular tool is doing its job, we are having a rational mind. Are we using our rationality there? When we have to go and buy a cell phone or a car or any other electronic gadget, how much comparative study we do, How much is i10 for, and how much is Ford for, and how much is a Toyota for? What is this and what is that? What appeals to my status, to my pocket, to my family needs? We do so much of this comparative study. But when we have to engage with something that's going to work on my mind, we just lap it up. So how can you and I, you being a psychologist and I being a Buddhist nun, tell someone out there, this is not good for you? We have been saying it for the longest time. Unless the person acknowledges that, is it truly applicable, true to me? And perhaps I'm repeating myself over this, that check around. Look within yourself. Your dreams and aspirations and everything is one thing. By the end of the day, do you get a sound sleep? Are you content with what you have? Are you content with your own self? You may not be content with your bank balance, understandable, but are you content with the way you engage with your bank balance? Are you content? And that's what it is in the Buddhist perspective. To be content equals to be happy. What are your definitions of being happy? Have you reflected on the preciousness of our human life? Coming from a population of 1.2 billion people, we can think what is so precious about being a human, Every second, on AIMS, there's a whole big digital big framework showing how many children are born per second. When you look at that and you say, what is so precious about my life? Being born human. And that's where the mistake lies. And that's where it's very clear loudly in the Buddhist canon. We are born with Buddha nature. We have the Tathagat Garbha. That means the Buddha nature inside, the seed inside us to become awakened. And how easily we let it go and we say, it's okay. I can handle my, you have the statistical sort of graph of little misery, some happiness, little misery. I'm okay as long as it's not dipping here. Why blame the social media? Someone like us is creating that content, getting paid for it. Is the person, not coming to ethics, is the person questioning it, the content that I'm creating must be influencing so many minds. Am I creating the right kind of content? And I'm not saying all content has to be preachy and full of, do's and don'ts. Come on, it can be boring. Can I make qualitative content as a media person? So it's a question by and large for all walks of lives. When I'm engaging as a doctor with my patient, am I reaching a compassion fatigue? That I am actually reaching a point and snapping at the patient and saying, didn't I tell you last time not to eat this and drink this? Again you come back with the same problem. So then imagine Buddha saying this to us. It's been 2,600 years, baby. You still have the same problem? You still have anger? You haven't worked on your anger? I gave you a gazillion tools. What's wrong with you? But he never does that. His Holiness the Dalai Lama never does that in his teachings. Have you heard him raising his voice? He repeats himself over and over and over again. And we, his disciples, chaksa, chaksa, chaksa. When it comes to following and implementing his teachings, zilch. I still have anger, I'm sorry. I'm just so ordinary. And we take great pride in being ordinary. When he's saying, but I don't see you as an ordinary being. I see you as becoming awakened beings. I see you as Buddhas. That's why I'm engaging with you. But you are just seeing yourself as an ordinary being coming from your third mode of ego. I'm so full of self-loathing. Try telling this to your patient and you'll say, I don't like that doctor anymore. She didn't Modi call me, So why blame? Can you send me a hair conditioner? Do I have hair? Even if you present me one of the most, best shampoos in the market right now and gift it to me, and give me all its top qualities, will I engage with it? I might just accept it because you're gifting it to me with so much love and pass it on to somebody who actually has hair. It doesn't affect me because I don't have the need for it. I might have a need for a good razor, but that's a separate thing. But this is how you should engage with all these things that you're getting from social media. Do I need this? Is it applicable to me? And if it's not, then don't worry about it. Let it not shape your mindset or disturb your mindset.
Thank you very much. And just to make this, so that we could utilize as much as, your knowledge, I would like to, then let me just ask you the last question and then we would open it to the audience. And whoever wants to ask any questions regarding Buddhism, regarding psychology and even the convergence of it or anything related to mental health, then they can go on. So let me just give you the last question very quickly. How would helping others as opposed to helping oneself be seen as a therapeutic tool in being happy and mentally healthy? Venerable.
I like this question. Okay, so how can helping others help us?
We talk about altruism in
Yes,
Buddhism.
of course. First of all, let's retract a bit. To be able to help others, I must first be in a position to be able to help others. So I must first help myself. I must first have a healthy relationship with myself before I go and extend myself to others. Right? You agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So first of all, cultivating a healthy relationship with oneself. Second, when you've done that, extending that. Because if you are unhappy within your own self, any act of your kindness or compassion is just an offshoot of your ego. It's a very subtle kind. It makes me look good. You know, stemming from one of the 8 worldly dharmas. It gets me a good name. I'm accepted. I am put on a pedestal. That's not true engaging of helping. And yes, of course, if you have a good, healthy relationship with your own self, and from that altruistic mind, you go and extend this thought, this attitude to others, then amazing. Because we are all interdependent. If I'm sitting here enjoying the warmth of this room, clearly somebody has put in great amount of time and effort in designing this room to be in such a way that I can be warm. I'm eating good delicious food, somebody's working really hard on the fields, especially on this high altitude, that I can have the delicious food. So I am dependent on that farmer for my sustainability of my own health. So we are all interconnected. But we tend to categorize people, my family, my loved one, my friend, or the next category will come, someone I don't like, this harm giver, or we're branded as enemy, to be on an extreme. And then the third category, we like to label them as strangers. I mean, why do I care? How does it affect my life? But it does, we're all interconnected. And just reflect on this to see if it's true. So even if I might not be directly connected with the farmer who's tilling his land so that I can have to produce, and the mind can argue, but that's his job. If he doesn't till the land and make a livelihood, how will he live? Well, clearly so. But when I'm engaging with that being, even in my thought, can I have a thought of compassion? May that farmer have good conditions. That's the first level of engagement, right? I might not be having an opportunity for expressing my gratitude to him in person. May I have it in my thought, in my prayers for that person. Right, like how we do it for our soldiers. I mean, how many of us would really enthusiastically wake up in the morning and say, let me pick up the flag and my gun and go and stand outside in -6 degrees and feel very happy about it? Clearly, not me. I don't know about anybody else. But there's somebody else doing it for me. Can I have him in my thought? When we help others, it also automatically nourishes our seed of kindness. It helps us percolate. It helps us grow, And then it makes it easy for us to go on doing it more and more because we like what we are receiving also. And not to turn this into a reward mechanism. What's in for me? Then it could start from there. What's in for me? Or after a point we say, can I just do it selflessly? I don't care what's in for me. I'm just doing it because I enjoy this process.
So I'm being reminded that we have time constraint. So we'll just, before we break for the tea, we'll just take probably 3 or 4 questions, Venerable La. So please, over to you. Yeah. This is a great opportunity for us, to have her here. She's a very busy person, as we know. Okay, that's very humble of you. But I'd like all of you to, please ask questions.
I might not have all the answers.
All the answers, of course, that is the intention, that it's supposed to be a dialogue, a conversation, and a room to think and go back home and then ponder about it, reflect about it, and then life is a learning process. It should go on. So anyone from the audience? I'd like also we have here very prestigious guests also. Like you said, I forgot to introduce myself. I forgot to give respects to the officers who's sitting here. So we have...
and everybody has their masks on, so I cannot see anybody.
So we also had the IG General, of Ladakh. He was here for a very brief period. And then we also have Ma'am Kun. People, me and I, we work in this organization. Me and him, we work in this organization called Pain and Palliative Care. I'm sure you know what that is. And so yeah, we collaborated in many other projects as well. But he's somebody who's very senior and has a lot of experience dealing with people because psychiatry, mental health, OPD, this is something very new. So initially, physicians, they handle everything. So I'd like to ask him to please put forward a question.